Hello, my name is Aftab. This is the third video in this series. Pompeii. Pompeii was a lively, bustling town to the south of Rome. It stood at the foot of a giant volcano called Mount Vesuvius, which had been dormant for many years. But on the fateful morning of 24th of August 79 CE, Vesuvius suddenly erupted. Pompeii and its neighboring towns, such as Herculaneum, were covered in tons of lava, stones, and hot rock. Ash and debris then rained down for almost 2 days, burying everything in sight. While many people managed to escape, it is believed that more than 2,000 Pompeians lost their lives in the violent eruption. Pompeii was never rebuilt, and the ash-covered town lay untouched for almost 1700 years. It was only in the late 16th century that archaeologists began to uncover the ruins of Pompeii. To their surprise, they found that the ash had preserved much of the town. They found houses, shops, baths, and theaters, and everyday items such as mirrors, coins, and pens. The remains of loaves of bread were even found in a preserved bakery. Many of the taverns and other buildings had paintings on their walls which showed women serving drinks and men playing dice games. Some walls even had graffiti written on them describing local politics and gladiator games. Because of these discoveries, we know much more about how people lived during Roman times. And Pompeii is now a popular destination for tourists from around the world. Entertainment at the Colosseum. The Romans enjoyed many different kinds of entertainment, and performances of all sorts drew in big audiences. Shows were often held in open-air arenas called amphitheaters. The largest amphitheater in the Roman Empire was called the Colosseum. It took almost 10 years to build, and once completed, the Colosseum could welcome up to 50,000 spectators. The Colosseum sometimes hosted musicians and beast hunters who battled wild animals, but gladiator fights were its most popular attraction. Gladiators were professional, specially trained fighters who were often forced to fight in front of an audience. There were many different ranks of gladiators, each with their own set of weapons and clothing. Most gladiators were either criminal or enslaved people who were there against their will, but some had volunteered to fight. Evidence from 100 to 200 CE also shows that women sometimes fought as gladiators too. A female gladiator was called gladiatrix. When a fighter became seriously injured, they could look to the crowd for mercy. We can't be sure what signals were made, but many historians think that the crowd would wave their handkerchiefs if they wanted the gladiator to live, but turn their thumbs down if they wanted them to be killed. If the emperor was in the audience, the final decision lay in his hands. Since they were expensive to train, many gladiators were allowed to live. Chariot racing. Chariot racing was another hugely popular competition enjoyed by the Romans. Originally invented by the Greeks, this sport was fast-paced and dangerous, adding to the thrill of the crowd. Chariot races in Rome were held at the Circus Maximus, which could host up to 250,000 people. One of the largest sports arenas ever built. There were several tiers of seating inside the circus, with the emperor and most important senators watching the race from special boxes and the high seats. In the middle of the oval-shaped racetrack was the spina, a barrier for the chariots to race around. Competitors drove the chariots, which were small two-wheeled vehicles that would usually be drawn by 4 horses. During the early days of the Roman Empire, chariots raced in teams that were organized into 4 different colors: white, blue, red, and green. People would often have one particular team that they always supported, just like many of us have our favorite sports teams. Up to 12 chariots would compete per race, and they would have to be the first to complete 7 laps around the circus to win. A charioteer named Gaius Appuleius Dioculi, who won over 1400 races during his career, is thought to be one of the most well-paid athletes of all time. A trip to the theatre. During the early days of the Republic, plays were usually only held on special occasions and took place in a town square called the Forum. However, in the age of the Empire, plays became more popular and began to be performed more regularly. Theatres that could host larger plays and bigger audiences began to be constructed from 55 CE. In these new buildings, the audience would sit on seats in a semicircle that faced a stage in the center called the pulpitum, similar to the way audiences are seated in modern-day theatres. It was designed this way so that more people in the audience could hear the play. Just like many other parts of its society, Roman theatre was also heavily influenced by the Greeks. There were several types of play performed in Rome, but the most popular were pantomimes, comedies, and tragedies. A North African playwright called Terence, who had come to Rome after being enslaved, was well known for his comedies. Another playwright called Plautus wrote several famous comedies as well, while a man called Seneca was best known for tragedy. Both Terence and Seneca are thought to have influenced some of the works of the famous English playwright William Shakespeare. The stories that are told through Roman plays reveal a lot about their way of life, which is why people continue to study and perform them. With this video, we have completed further 4 chapters of this book. In our next video, we will read further chapters. Until then, be good, be safe, goodbye.